Hello and welcome to Maths by SAS. This is my first lesson of D2, chapter number 2, exercise 2A, that is about the gradient of straight line. Before going to the lesson, there are some key points that we need to understand. That the topic is the gradient of straight line. So it's really important to understand that what is the meaning of the term gradient, and what is the general form of straight line, and how many types and forms of straight lines are with us, horizontal, vertical lines, and what is M, what does the symbol M stand for and C stand for, and what is the slope intercept form or non-vertical equation of line. These are the questions that have to be really clear to all of my students. If you find any difficulty in understanding the concept of gradient or horizontal, vertical and non-vertical lines, you must have to watch the previous lesson, for which I will be giving the link of the lesson in the description box, because lessons of mathematics require continuous practice and integration of the lesson with the previous lesson for better understanding. So let's move to basic level question number 1. And question 1 says, in question 1, students, you can see the graph is already given to us, and there are two lines given in red color, and the question says we have to write the gradient of each of the following lines. Gradient. So we have to find the gradient of line 1, keeping in mind that the gradient is the ratio of rise to run. Gradient rise to run, rise to run. So if we talk about line 1, observe the line carefully. Line 1 is parallel to x-axis. Its cutting meeting at y-axis at y is equal to 4. So all the lines which are parallel to x-axis, they are horizontal lines, and when they are horizontal lines, their gradient is 0. So the gradient of line 1 is 0. And what is the reason? Because horizontal line. Let's talk about line 2. What type of the line? Line 2 is parallel to y-axis. Its cutting meeting at certain point on x-axis. So it's a vertical line. So what is the gradient of vertical lines? All vertical lines have the gradient undefined. Undefined. I hope you are really clear that how we are observing and how we are deciding that the gradient is either 0 or undefined. And why is 0? Because line 1 is horizontal line, and line 2 is your vertical line. So if the features of the lines are in your mind, then you can easily decide that what type of line is that and what can be the gradient of that line. Moving to question number 2. Question 2 says, given that the equation of the line representing each of the following linear graph is in the form of y equals to mx plus c, find the gradient and state the y-intercept. Here the question says that the given equations are representing the graph of some line which is in the form of y equals to mx plus c, where what is m? M, the coefficient of x, is the gradient, and c is the y-intercept. C is what is c? C y-intercept. C is the point where your line meets your y-axis. Okay. Now there are two methods of finding gradient. One with the help of finding using 2-point formula that I will be discussing in my later class. Here I will be going for the calculation of gradient graphically, and for graphical purpose what we have to do in order to find the gradient, we have to try to complete a right angle triangle, and we have to take any 2 points on the line, and then we have to find the ratio between the height and base of that triangle. Suppose for line 1, for graph 1, I'm completing the right triangle. Suppose at this place, that x value I'm taking 3 and y value again I'm taking 3. I hope my camera can show this. Now look, this is the height. This is height of that triangle, and this is base of that triangle. Okay, so gradient is the ratio of what? Ratio of height and base, rise and run. Gradient ratio means fraction, rise and run. Okay, now look, rise is of how many units? 3 units, and run again is of how many units? 3 units. So 3 upon 3, 3 ones are, 3 ones are, and m equals to 1. M is 1 for this question. And see y-intercept. Okay, observe the graph carefully, that this line is not meeting any point on y-axis, so C will be 0. C will be 0. Okay, I hope you are clear about this. And let me draw this line with pen so that my students can see it clearly, that for the gradient we have to do it graphically, and we have to take the ratio of rise to run for the second part. Again, what we have to do is that we have to state M and C for the calculation of C. We have to observe that at what point on y-axis my line is meeting. If we observe this blue line, we can see that this line is meeting on y-axis at -1, so C will be -1. And we know the formula for the gradient is ratio of rise to run, and for the rise and run purpose, what we are going to do, we have to take any 2 points on this line, and we have to try to complete a right triangle, and then we have to take the ratio of base and height of that triangle. Suppose if I'm taking this point, okay, and I'm completing the right triangle at this place. Okay, let me make it little dark. In the next class, I'll be teaching you how to take 2 points and find the gradient with the help of formula as well. Now we can see that this is rise, height, rise, and this is run. Okay, in the rise, I'm taking how many blocks? 1, 2, 3, and 4 blocks. 4 blocks in the rise side. Right side 4 block, and in the run side again from 4 to 3 1 unit, 3 to 2 second, third, and this is fourth. Rise upon run, 4 upon 4, 4 ones are, 4 ones are. So M equals to 1, and see the point where the line cuts meets y-axis. C equals to -1. One of the important concepts you must have to watch and understand this lesson carefully. Okay, in the next parts I will be trying to solve the question and the part of the gradient graphically, as well as by taking 2 points and by using the formula as well. Moving to the next part. Okay, if we look at the graph of C part, we can see that the graph is cutting at x-axis at 0.4 and y-axis at 0.8. So in order to find M, I will be going this time with the help of 2 points as well, so that my students should have the good idea about the points as well. Because here if we look at the learning corner, we can see that gradient is the ratio of rise and run, change in y value upon change in x value, or y2 minus y1 upon x2 minus x1. So let's take any 2 points. Like when the point is on x-axis, let me mark it as A. Its value will be 4 and 0. And this point is on y-axis, its x value will be 0. Okay. Now, let's find first the gradient graphically, and then we'll be comparing whether answer with the help of the graph and whether answer with the help of formula is same or not. As we know that the gradient is the ratio of rise to run, and we can see that the rise is of how many units? 8 units, and run is of 4 units. And secondly, the line is in second and fourth quadrant. It has the falling trend, so the gradient will be negative, so gradient will be -2. And let's have the experience of finding the gradient with the help of formula as well. Let one of the point is A, 4 and 0, and B is 0 with 8. Formula for the gradient is y2 minus y1 upon x2 minus x1. y2 this is the value of x, and as this is the first point, so we can mark it as x1, y1, x2 and y2. That means 8 minus 0 upon 0 minus 4, and m 8 upon minus 4, m equals to minus 4 ones are and 4 twos are. Gradient is -2. So we can see that when we were finding the gradient graphically, even then we were getting the answer -2. Coming to C, recall what is C. C, y-intercept, the point where the line cuts meets y-axis. So C of the line is 8. Really easy questions. And let's move to the next part. And for the next part, we can see that the line is cutting on x-axis at what point? -1, and on y-axis -3 and 0. Again here I will be going with the help of the formula as well. Here the point is on y-axis, so its value will be 0 and -3, and point is on x-axis -1 and 0. So m rise upon run, okay, first with the help of formula and then graphically as well. We'll be confirming that. Okay, now what we can do is that rise point we are taking is 0 with -3 and -1 with 0, y2 minus y1, upon x2 minus x1, 0 minus and -3 from the question, and -1 minus 0, and this will give me 3 upon -1, which is equal to -3. So m by calculation is -3, and let's observe whether we are getting a gradient -3 with the help of graph as well. We know that for the graphical purpose we have to take any 2 points on this line, and we have to try to complete the right triangle, and we have to apply the formula ratio of rise to run. Now if we can see that this is the run side, and run side is having how many blocks? This is the rise side, and rise side is having how many blocks? 3 blocks, and run is having 1 block, and line is in the falling trend. So graphically as well we are getting -3. And now let's talk about C. What was C? C, y-intercept, the point where the line cuts meets y-axis. C is equal to -3. Really easy questions. And let's move to the next part. And in the next part, E part, the line which is given to us is cutting y-axis at one clear point, that is 3. So what is the name of the point where the line cuts meets y-axis? That is y-intercept, that is C. And we have to find the gradient, and gradient will be finding graphically and with the formula as well. So if I'm taking any 2 points on the graph M rise over run, and for that purpose what we can do is that if I'm taking suppose 2 points, I have to complete a triangle here. Let me draw the triangle so that my students can understand this whole process properly. This is the run side and the rise side. Okay, now look, in the right side I'm taking how many blocks? 1, 2 and 3 blocks. 1, 2 and 3 blocks on the right side, and run side. This is right side and this is run side. On the right side I have taken 3 blocks and run side 2, so the gradient is 3 by 2 or 1.5. Now let's confirm the gradient with the help of formula by taking any 2 points x2 minus. Students, it's up to you. At this junior level, at class 8 level, you can either go graphically or you can apply the concept of the gradient by using the formula by taking any 2 points. Suppose I'm taking one of the point 0 with 3, and other point on the same line can be 2 with 6. Okay, look, I am taking x value 2 and y value 6. 2 with 6, so y2 minus y1, 6 minus 3 upon 2 minus 0, and this will give me 3 by 2. So the gradient of this part is 3 by 2 or 1.5, and C, the place where the line cuts meets y-axis, C is 3 if I'm not wrong. Okay, and then moving to the next part, and in the next part the question that is given to us has the graph which is cutting meeting y-axis at point 3 and x-axis at point 2. So if we apply the ratio of rise and run, F part gradient rise upon run, and we are completing the right triangle at this place, we can see that on the right side we have how many blocks? We have 3 blocks. And on the run side, how many blocks are there? There are 2, and the line is having the falling trend. Line is in the second and fourth quadrant, so the gradient will be negative or minus 1.5. And moving to this calculation of gradient with the help of formula, for that purpose you can take, students, any 2 points like 0 with 3 and 2 with 0, and use the formula m equals to y2 minus y1 upon x2 minus x1, 0 minus 3 upon 2 minus 0, and this will give me minus 3 by 2. M equals to minus 3 by 2 or 1.5. And what about C? C is the place where your line is cutting meeting your y-axis, and C is equal to 3. And moving to the next part. Before going to G part, it's really important to recall the formulas, that the formula for the gradient is ratio of rise to run, change in y value upon change in x value, or y2 minus y1 upon x2 minus x1. Gradient, ratio of rise to run, and C, the y-intercept. C can be easily calculated, located by observation, students, by looking at the graph at what point your line is cutting or meeting y-axis. That will be your C, the y-intercept. In G part, if we look at the diagram carefully, in G part, the diagram which is given to us is cutting or meeting x-axis at point 3 and y-axis at point 4. Okay, so if we are going for the calculation of gradient graphically, for that purpose we know that we have to take any 2 points and we have to complete a right triangle on those 2 points, and then we have to take the ratio of what? Ratio of rise means change in along y-axis upon change in x-axis. Rise upon, this is the rise side and this is the run side. So the gradient ratio of rise to run. Rise is having how many blocks? Rise is having 4 blocks and run is having 3 blocks, and y negative because the line is in the falling trend, so minus 1/3 or 1.3. And if we apply the concept of gradient with the help of formula 2 points, for that purpose, or m equals to y2 minus y1 upon x2 minus x1. y2 minus y1, we can take any 2 points like 3 and 0 and 0 with 4. y2 minus y1, 4 minus 0 upon 0 minus 3, which is equal to 4 upon 3. So the gradient is 4 upon 3, and the C, the point where the line cuts meets y-axis, C equals to 4. I hope if the basic concepts are clear, then the question will no more be difficult for you. Then the next part is H part, and if we look at the graph of H part, again H part is cutting your both x-axis and y-axis at clear points. So if we want to apply the concept of gradient graphically, that ratio of rise to run, and your rise is along which axis? Rise is along y-axis. This is the rise side and this is the run side. So in the rise side we have how many blocks? We have 4 blocks in the rise side, 4 blocks in the rise side, and run side has 5 blocks. And again the gradient will be positive because the line is having the rising trend. Okay, and if we want to calculate the gradient with the help of formula, for that purpose what we are going to do, we have to write on the formula y2 minus y1 upon x2 minus x1. Take any 2 points like I am taking 0 with 4 and minus 5 with 0, and y2 0 minus 4 upon minus 5 minus 0, m equals to minus 4 by minus 5, so m equals to 4 by 5. Okay, and C, what is C? C, the y-intercept, the place where your line is cutting meeting y-axis. So C of this question is 4. Moving to I part, and in I part the line which is given to us is cutting or meeting x-axis at 0.4 and y-axis at 0.6. Now what to do to find the gradient? We know that for the gradient purpose we have to take any 2 points and we have to try to complete a right triangle, and then we have to take the ratio of height and base of that triangle. M equals to rise upon run, and rise will always be along which axis? Y-axis, and run will always be along which axis? X-axis. So in the rise part we are taking 2, 4 and 6 blocks, and in the run part 2 and 4 blocks. And again observe the line is having the rising trend. Okay, so rising trend, it means the gradient will be positive. 2 3s are and 2 2s are 3 by 2 or 1 by 2. And let's confirm the gradient with the help of formula as well, that m equals to y2 minus y1 upon x2 minus x1. Now what we can do is that we can take any 2 points, like I'm taking 4 and 0, and 0 with minus 6, y2 minus y1, minus 6 minus 0 upon 0 minus 4, m equals to minus 6 by minus 4, and which will finally be giving me 3 by 2 or 1.5 or 1 whole 1 by 2. So the gradient of this line is 3 by 2 or 1.5. And let's talk about C. Observe this graph and look at what point this line is cutting meeting y-axis. So C of this question is minus 6. Okay, and let me draw the line here so that I can perform working for the next part as well. For moving to J part, for J part, m equals to rise upon run. Rise is along y-axis, and rise is of how many units? Rise, and this is run. This is run. Okay, try to complete the triangle graphically. Okay, and rise is of how many units? 4 units, and run 2, 4, 6 and 8, and the line is having a falling trend. Line is in the second and fourth quadrant, so gradient will be negative. Gradient is minus 1 by 2. And let's talk about C graphically. C is 4, the y-intercept of this question. I hope really easy questions. Please watch and understand this lesson properly, because this is one of the important lessons of your O-level examination. Moving to question number 3. But before going to question number 3, there are some key points that we need to understand. That what are the parallel lines? In your D1, you have read the topic of parallel lines, the lines that never meet each other, like the railway lines. When we talk about the parallel lines with the reference of alternate and corresponding angles, their angles must be same. But when we talk about the concept of parallel lines with the reference of gradient, what is the point that will be telling us that the lines are parallel? That is important to understand, that parallel lines will have the same gradient, and if the gradients of 2 or 3 lines are same, then the lines will be parallel. And what is the general form of non-vertical line? That is y equals to mx plus c, and in that line what is m? M is gradient and c is y-intercept. Keeping these points in your mind, let's move to question number 3. Question 3 says, the figure shows 5 lines. Line 1, this is non-vertical line. Line 2, this is parallel to x-axis. So recall that when the line is parallel to x-axis, what is the general name of that line and what are the qualities of that line. If you find any difficulty in identification and type of line, you have to watch the basic lesson, for which I will be giving the link of the lesson in the description box, because lessons of mathematics are integrated with each other. If one link and connection is weak, the next link will also be weak. Line 3 is again the non-vertical line. Line 4 is non-vertical line, and line 5 is parallel to y-axis. So what will be the name of this line and what will be the properties and qualities of this line? These are the questions that have to be in your mind before going to this question. So let's talk about the gradient of the given lines. So let's talk about line 1. Line 1 is a non-vertical line. So recall the process that what to do to find the gradient of non-vertical line. For the gradient of non-vertical line, we have to try to complete a right angle triangle. Take any 2 points and complete the right angle triangle, and we have to take the ratio of rise and run. And rise will be along which axis, students? Rise will always be along y-axis and run will always be along x-axis. Okay, rise upon run. You must have to support your working with formulas so that examiner can understand you're working properly. Rise is starting from 1 and ending at 3, so 2 units rise, and 3, 4 and 5, 2 units run. So the gradient of line 1 is 1. M equals to 1. Let me write it properly. Okay. As the line is having the falling trend, so gradient will be equal to minus 1. Why gradient minus 1? Because the line is having the falling trend. I hope you are clear about this. Let's talk about line 2. Line 2. Line 2, what type of the line is this? Line 2 is the line which is parallel to x-axis. It's a horizontal line, and what will be the gradient of all horizontal lines? M1, okay, M2, that will be 0. 0. Gradient of line 2 will be 0. And why is that 0? Because the line is horizontal, it's parallel to x-axis. All horizontal lines have their gradient 0. Okay, moving to line 3. Again, line 3 is what type of line? Line 3 is a non-vertical line, and for all non-vertical lines, what we have to do, we have to take the ratio of rise and run. Okay, be careful because this is 1 unit and this is coming in between. This is coming in between 1.5 upon 1.5. Line 3 is non-vertical line. Let me mark the gradient of this line with M3. Rise upon run. Rise upon run. Okay, let me complete the triangle here. Rise. Now do observe. Rise. From 1 to 2 rises of 1 unit, and this point is coming between 2 and 3, 1.5. 1.5 upon, now let's talk about run again, minus 1 to 0, 1 unit and 1.5. This is 1.5, so gradient of line 3 is 1. Line 4. Line 4, again identify the type of line. Line 4 is again a non-vertical line. Okay, so for line 4, M4, what we have to do, first of all, we have to take any 2 points, and we have to try to complete a right angle triangle on this line. Okay, so if I'm taking the point, from this point I'm coming right in front of this point. This is 0.5, and then, okay, let me hold the page. Let me hold the page properly. Now see, on the run side, we have how many blocks? This is 2 from 1 to 2, 1 unit, and 0.5 on this side, 0.5 on this side. So 2 units on the run side and rise side. Rise side 1, 2, 3, 4, and 0.5 on this side and 0.5 on this side. So 5. Let me make this diagram perfect so that my students can observe it clearly. That for line 3, I'm completing the right angle triangle. This is rise side, and this is run side. Okay, in the rise side, okay, how many blocks? From 1 to 2, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, and 0.5 and 0.5. This will give me 5 full blocks. And on the run side, again from 1 to 2, 1 definite, and 0.5 over here and half block over here, so 5 by 2. And secondly, the line is in the 2nd and 4th quadrant, falling trend, so gradient of line 4 will be minus 2 whole 1 by 2. Okay, moving to line 5. Line 5. Do observe line 5 carefully. We can see that line 5 is parallel to which axis? That is parallel to y-axis. and its cutting meeting at certain point like 2.5 on x-axis. So all the lines which are parallel to y-axis are the vertical lines, and their gradient is undefined. I hope you are really clear about this question, and let's move to the next question. And first let's read the question properly. Question says that in the figure, line 1 is parallel to x-axis. Line 1 parallel to what? X-axis. It's always good to write down small information. Line 1 is parallel to x-axis, and line 3 is parallel to what? Line 3 is parallel to y-axis. Recall the properties of these lines. And then line 2 and line 5. Line 2 is parallel to line 5. Line 2 parallel to line 5. Line 5. Line 4 parallel to line 6. Line 4 is parallel to line 6. Okay. If the gradient of line 5 and line 6, gradient of line 5 is -3, and line 6, gradient of line 6 is half, respectively, write down the gradients of line 1, line 2, line 3 and line 4. We have to find the gradient and write the gradient of line 1. Then we have to write down the gradient of line 2 and line 3 and line 4. Line 4. Okay, let's talk about the question once again. Line 1 is parallel to x-axis. When any line is parallel to x-axis, then recall that what type of line will be that. Line which is parallel to x-axis is horizontal line, and its gradient will be equal to 0. Then we have to state the gradient of line 3. Okay, first let's talk about line 3 because we have written the data first. Now line 3 is parallel to which axis? Line 3 is parallel to y-axis. Line 3 parallel to y-axis. So parallel lines have the same gradient, and when the line is parallel to y-axis, its vertical line, its gradient is undefined. Now let's talk about line 5. Line 5 and which other line are parallel? Line 2 and line 5 are parallel because line 2 is parallel to what line? Parallel to line 5, and line 5 has the gradient -3. So gradient of line 2 will be equal to -3. And what is the reason? Because line 2 is parallel to line 5. Line 2 and line 5, they are parallel to each other. Look at the graph given. Line 2 and line 5 are parallel. If the gradient of line 5 is -3, gradient of line 2 will also be -3. Now we are left with 4 and 6, and we are given with the gradient of line 6 again, and gradient of line 4 we need to find. Line 4 will be equal to 1/2 because L4 is parallel to L6. I hope students you are really clear about this point, that when two lines are parallel, their gradients are same. And if the gradients are same, lines are parallel, we can see that line 1 is parallel to x-axis, and all the horizontal lines have the gradient 0. That's why gradient of line 1 is 0. line 3 is parallel to y-axis. Its vertical line, all vertical lines have the gradient undefined, so that's why the gradient of line 3 is undefined. Coming to line 5 and line 2, 5 and 2, okay, 5 and 2 are parallel to each other, so and the gradient of line 5 is minus 3, gradient of line 5 is minus 3, so the gradient of line 5 will also be equal to, gradient of line 2 will also be equal to minus 3, and same for 4 and 6. 4 and 6, the gradient of line 6 which is given to us is 1 by 2, so gradient of the required line, because they are parallel to each other, that will also be half. I hope students you are really clear that how to find the gradient of the line graphically and with the help of 2 points, and how to identify C, and what is the role of gradient in identification of parallel lines. Please watch and understand these all lessons properly. Please watch my lessons, like, share and subscribe the channel, and press bell icon to get the notification of every lesson in time. Thank you very much.